Welcome back to The Explainer. We are diving right into one of the most consequential and, frankly, fascinating showdowns of the 2026 midterms, the race for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. With Democratic incumbent Gary Peters stepping aside, this critical battleground state is wide open. And let me tell you, both parties are going absolutely all in. To really grasp the stakes here, we have to look at a specific year. 1994. That is the last time Republicans won a U.S. Senate seat in Michigan. It's a massive 3-decade drought. But remember, this is also a state that Donald Trump carried in 2024. So the stage is set for a fiercely competitive environment. Republicans see a prime pickup opportunity, while Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to hold the line in the industrial Midwest. So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll cover the 2026 battleground stakes, the Democratic insurgent upset, the Republican establishment path, the matchup itself, each campaign's strengths and challenges, and finally, the November outlook. Starting off with Section 1, the 2026 battleground stakes, an open seat in a swing state. Which brings us to Section 2, the Democratic insurgents upset, focusing on Abdul El-Sayed's grassroots victory. You know, an open Senate seat in a swing state during a midterm election, that is a rare political perfect storm. For Democrats, their primary instantly became a defining ideological battleground, pitting the moderate establishment against a surging progressive movement. Let's trace how their nominee actually got here. Abdul El-Sayed is a physician and epidemiologist. He was Detroit's health director back in 2015, ran for governor in 2018, and then served as Wayne County health director. Fast forward to August 2026, and he pulls off a massive primary upset against establishment favorite U.S. Representative Haley Stevens. And he did this despite Stevens having the heavy-hitting endorsements of both Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Senator Gary Peters. El-Sayed ran this highly energized grassroots campaign anchored on universal health care, labor rights, and very distinct foreign policy views, including a call for an arms embargo on Israel. Now, to really understand the sheer scale of this upset, we've got to talk about the spending. $60 million. Outside groups poured a staggering $60 million into backing his moderate opponent, Haley Stevens. That included over $30 million from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee and its affiliates. El-Sayed was outspent roughly 9-1. But his grassroots mobilization, especially among young voters, progressives, and Arab American communities in Southeast Michigan, well, it was enough to push him right across the finish line. Naturally, national progressive leaders championed this as a total watershed moment. Senator Bernie Sanders, who was an early supporter, called it, quote, the most extraordinary victory that I can think of in modern American politics. For the progressive wing of the party, El-Sayed's victory is the ultimate test of their theory. The idea that bold, left-wing, policy-focused candidates can't just win in deep blue districts, but can actually mobilize enough voters to win statewide in highly contested swing states. Let's flip to the other side of the aisle for Section 3, the Republican establishment path, where Mike Rogers unifies the base. So, while Democrats waged this costly, intensely ideological primary, Republicans rallied early and decisively around a known commodity. Mike Rogers offers a stark contrast in political background. He brings extensive national security credentials to the table. He's a U.S. Army veteran and a former FBI special agent who specialized in organized crime. On top of that, he served in the U.S. House from 2001 to 2015, eventually chairing the powerful House Intelligence Committee. Now, even though he narrowly lost his 2024 U.S. Senate race, he easily cleared the 2026 primary field, grabbing over 60% of the vote. Because of that, he enters the general election with his financial capital preserved and completely unified backing across state and national Republican leadership. Strategically, Rogers is framing 2026 as a change election. As he puts it, quote, the Democrats have been in charge here, and we're going to change that. I'm going to be a part of that change. He's aiming to leverage suburban shifts while focusing heavily on the economy. We're talking manufacturing, utility rates, and housing costs. His core argument is that voters feel something is fundamentally broken after years of Democratic control at the state level, and he's positioning himself as the pragmatic, common-sense alternative. Moving on to Section 4, the matchup, contrasting campaigns. What we have here is a classic political matchup. On one side, Abdul El-Sayed, the insurgent, progressive outsider relying on incredible grassroots energy and major structural policy changes to drive base turnout. On the exact opposite side, Mike Rogers, the establishment veteran, leaning on deep national security expertise, a highly unified conservative base, and a targeted appeal to suburban and rural voters. It's literally two totally different theories on how to win a Midwestern battleground. That brings us to Section 5, strengths and challenges.
Let's look at their paths to victory and their vulnerabilities.
Both candidates bring very distinct assets to the table. El Sayed's primary win proved he has a massive, highly energized volunteer coalition that is uniquely capable of driving youth and Arab American turnout, specifically in Southeast Michigan. Plus, historically speaking, the party out of the White House usually holds a pretty significant enthusiasm advantage in midterm off years. Rogers, meanwhile, relies on deep statewide name recognition, a massive war chest that he saved by avoiding a brutal primary, and total lockstep alignment from the national and state Republican Party apparatus.
But it's not going to be a cakewalk for either of them. Look at the challenges. El Sayed has to quickly unite the moderate and establishment factions of a pretty fractured Democratic Party after that bruising primary against Haley Stevens. He also has to fend off intense Republican attacks, trying to paint him as, quote-unquote, too far left for a state that literally voted for Donald Trump in 2024. On the flip side, Rogers has to overcome the psychological and historical hurdle of that 1994 Republican Senate drought in Michigan. To pull that off, he has to carefully thread a very tight needle, motivating high turnout in his rural base while simultaneously defending moderate positions so he can expand his margins in crucial, swing-voting suburban counties like Oakland and Kent.
Finally, Section 6, the November Outlook, a toss-up election. With such wildly contrasting candidates, how are the voters of Michigan actually responding? Well, the short answer is they're completely divided. Early polling confirms the general election is an absolute toss-up. A recent Qantas Insight survey of nearly 1,000 Michigan voters shows El Sayed and Rogers basically tied. Because the margins are this razor-thin, we can absolutely expect historic levels of national investment, millions and millions of dollars in advertising, and incredibly intense voter mobilization efforts on the ground right through Election Day. Now, when we dig into the crosstabs of that polling, something really interesting stands out. El Sayed is showing an early edge among independent voters, leading Rogers roughly 41% to 36%. This is absolutely critical for El Sayed if he hopes to offset Rogers' structural advantage with white, rural, and non-college educated voters. Winning the center is just essential for a progressive candidate in a general election. On top of that, El Sayed's path relies heavily on geography. Right now, he is polling about 62% support among urban voters. To actually win this thing, he must maximize that urban strength. He has to ensure that all this grassroots enthusiasm actually translates into real votes at the ballot box in cities like Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Grand Rapids. Because if that urban turnout dips even slightly, Rogers' rural and suburban coalition will easily overtake him. So it all comes down to a fundamental clash of ideologies, and it's going to tell us exactly where the American electorate stands today. Will a progressive outsider prove that bold policy drives turnout? Or will a national security veteran leverage the suburbs to finally break a 3-decade Republican drought? Keep your eyes on Michigan to find out.